You can be seated. You know, happy Mother's Day. You know, it's so cool that Mother's Day comes when the dandelions are in bloom. You know, I think most mothers would have to agree that a dandelion bouquet given by a child is the most precious bouquet out there. You know, at least she expresses it that way. You know, maybe it's her expression that puts that memory into a child of how wonderful it is to bring her those dandelions. You know, we talked about avoiding the lion last week. You know, this week it's about dandelions and moms. And I usually don't plan my sermons to the holidays, but God has a way of orchestrating. You know, isn't that cool? Maybe He orchestrates things. And as I was reminded of Mother's Day last week, I was delighted when I started my sermon preparation and I looked below Jeroboam and what he did and the lion and that prophet and everything like that. And I looked to my surprise as I looked that the main character in today's message or passage was a mother. This mother happened to be King Jeroboam's wife. But in the story, she lays aside all her royal clothing, her jewelry, and she comes in a disguise. And out of concern for her son, but also as the king told her, you know, don't let him know that you are the king's wife. And she went to a prophet to ask about her child's welfare. How is my sick child going to go? How's the sickness going to go for him? You know, she may have been important to the kingdom, but here in this passage, she's just a mom. You know, I know all of us here are not mothers, but everyone here has a mother. And to those who gave birth to a child, we celebrate with you. To those who lost a child, we mourn with you. To those who are in the trenches with little ones every day and wear the badge of food stains, we appreciate you. To those who experience loss through miscarriage, failed adoptions, or running away, we mourn with you. To those who walk the hard path of infertility fraught with pokes, prods, tears, and disappointments, we walk with you. Forgive us when we say foolish things we don't mean to make it harder than it is. To those who are foster moms, mentor moms, spiritual moms, we need you. To those who have warm, close relationships with your children, we celebrate with you. To those who have disappointment, heartache, and distance with your children, we sit with you. To those who lost their mothers, we grieve with you. To those who experienced abuse at the hand of your own mother, we acknowledge your experience. And to those who will have emptier nests in the upcoming years, we grieve and rejoice with you. This Mother's Day, we walk with you. You know, mothering is not for the faint of heart, and we have real warriors in our midst. Even if you were just a mom, we remember you. Please let's turn to 1 Kings 14, verse 1. Do you know those women that are just moms? You know, their husbands go to work and they bring home a paycheck and they, while they were away, you know, they planted, they harvested, they plowed, they fixed things. They maybe got a new account. What in the world does mom have to show for the day that she spent home? After all, she's just a mom. The mom in our passage today will have even less to show at the end of her day than those moms. She had a son named Abijah. And basically, his name means a worshiper of Jah or a worshiper of God, Jehovah. And it appears she was a good mom. Her son was, according to the prophet, what he said is the only one in the house of Jeroboam in whom the Lord, the God of Israel, has found anything good. This son is sick. He's so sick that he will not make it to the end of the day. And the mom has gone to the prophet to ask about her son, and she will never see him again alive. In 1 Kings 14, verse 1, it starts out, at that time Abijah, son of Jeroboam, became ill. And Jeroboam said to his wife, "Go, disguise yourself so you won't be recognized as the wife of Jeroboam. Then go to Shiloh. Ahijah, the prophet, is there, the one who told me that I would be king over this people. Take 10 loaves of bread with you, some cake and a jar of honey, and go to him. He will tell you what will happen to the boy." So Jeroboam's wife did what he said and went to Ahijah's house in Shiloh. Now Ahijah could not see. His sight has gone because of his age. But the Lord told Ahijah, "Jeroboam's wife is coming to ask you about her son, for he is ill, and you are to give her such and such an answer. When she arrives, she will pretend to be someone else." So when Ahijah heard the sound of her footsteps at the door, he said, "Come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why this pretense? I have been sent to you with bad news. Go tell Jeroboam that this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I raised you up from among the people and made you a leader over my people. I tore the kingdom away from the house of David and gave it to you. But you have not been like my servant David, who kept my commands and followed me with all his heart, doing only what was right in my eyes. You have done more evil than all who lived before you. You have made for yourselves other gods, idols made of metal. You have provoked me to anger and thrust me behind your back. Because of this, I'm going to bring disaster on the house of Jeroboam. I'll cut off Jeroboam, every last male in Israel, slave or free. I will burn up the house of Jeroboam until, as one burns dung, until it is all gone. Dogs will eat those belonging to Jeroboam who die in the city, and birds of the air will feed on those who die in the country. The Lord has spoken. As for you, go back home. When you set foot in your city, the boy will die. All Israel will mourn for him and bury him. He is the only one belonging to Jeroboam who will be buried, because he is the only one in the house of Jeroboam in whom the Lord, the God of Israel, has found anything good. The Lord will raise up for himself a king over Israel, who will cut off the family of Jeroboam. This is the day. What? Yes, even now. You know, this is just mom hoped not to be recognized. And now as she walks into the city, especially now, you know, God laid out some pretty hard things, but you remember, God has a mother's heart. And when God picked Jeroboam and he says, "You're going to be king over," Jeroboam rejected him and turned his back on God. And now there's only one left in Jeroboam's family that God found anything good in. And it was this mom's child. And the only good in her life as a mother will now be taken away. You know, God used Jeroboam's only good son's death to send a message to Jeroboam that Jeroboam's whole house would be destroyed. Because of Jeroboam and the rest of his sons' disobedience to God's way, they are regarded as dung to be burned away completely. You know, we talked about dandelions a little bit this morning. You know, they're pretty in a bouquet, but they can sure make a yard look unkept. I was kind of happy to see the snow out there this morning. They covered all the dandelions. But I mowed the yard on Tuesday, and practically by Thursday and Friday, it looked like it was a mess again. You know what is worse than dandelions, though, in a yard? Dog poo. You know, we've all accidentally stepped in it. when everybody gets in the car and, we do the, all right, who stepped in the dog poo? And everybody gets out of the car and they look on it, and then that crazy yellow-orange stuff all stuck in the tread, and you take it on the tallest grass you can find, you just wipe and wipe and wipe, and it's still there, And the best thing you can do is take those shoes off and put them in a plastic bag and put them in the trunk, You just want to gag. You've all been there. You're right. Well, let's turn to 2 Timothy 1:5. I don't know if the mother of Abijah had any other children, but the dung the prophet Ahijah may have been referring to could have been the children of the other wives. But regardless, the message was heartbreaking for this mom. And I believe the message was heartbreaking for a Father in heaven. As he looked at Jeroboam's life, as he looked at Israel, the apple of his eye, turning their back on him. She tried to hide her identity from the prophet, but was found out. She was just a mom. Or she was not just a mom, she was the king's wife. She was very wife of the king that Ahijah the prophet had told years earlier that he would reign over Israel someday. What a disappointment Jeroboam had been and turned out to be, not only to God, but also to this prophet Ahijah, as this mom walks into his door all disguised. It was like Jeroboam had one dandelion in his family, in the yard, and the rest was dog poo. What a mess. God is grieved as well to the point of setting his mind to clean up the yard with the fire of his wrath. Before he does, though, he plucks up the beautiful dandelion and takes him home. The mother may have liked hearing that God saw that, this son, this precious son, was good. There's something good in your family. And she must have had mixed emotions as she knew that one good child would be taken away. Did the mom fail? She certainly had her heart broken. Can you imagine the turmoil as she walked the long road back to the city, knowing that as soon as she stepped into that city, her son would perish? Did God fail? Can you imagine the grief as he watched Jeroboam turn his back on him? Israel was God's chosen people with God's chosen king. And as God takes a stroll out in the yard, the stench of the sins of his people, his children, was so intense that he plucks up the only good flower so he can destroy the rest that turned their backs on him. Thankfully, this is not everyone's story. And we can look at other success stories where God blessed the work of the mothers. In 2 Timothy 1, starting with verse 5, it says, I've been reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I'm persuaded now lives in you also. For this reason, I remind you to fan into the flame the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and self-discipline. So do not be ashamed to testify about the Lord, or ashamed of me, his prisoner, but join with me in suffering for the gospel by the power of God, who has saved us and called us to a holy life, not because of anything we have done, but because of his own purpose and grace. This grace was given us in Christ Jesus before the beginning of time, but has now been revealed through the appearing of our Savior Jesus Christ, who has destroyed death and has brought life and immortality through the light of the gospel. Please let's turn to Luke 2:28. Whether your motherly experience has a few dandelion moments or many, it is a stewardship that God has entrusted you with. Timothy and Abijah were wonderful flowers. Timothy went on to live out his days in sharing God's message and to mother others in the Ephesians church. But even his life was tied to suffering in verse 8. Abijah's mother may have had mixed emotions. Abijah was a beautiful bouquet that died too quickly. But she had that memory to hold in her heart. The others that turned their backs and lived were far more grievous than the ones she lost, or the one she lost. Abijah was a symbol of Jesus. Jesus' mother also went to a prophet. She was just a mom. The prophet warned her of the pain involved. One day Mary would be there to watch her son die as a criminal on a cross. He would be cast out like dog poo. The cross, think about being there. We look at Jesus, we look at the cross as something magnificent. But just think about your child in the most shameful predicament imaginable. He's getting brought to the Sanhedrin, the spiritual court, and he's brought to the Roman court, and he's condemned to death. This is not something to be proud of. This is something shameful. And he's hung on the cross, and he's not just hung on the cross, he hung on the cross naked. It's ugly. And here's this mom. Think about it. Words cannot express the grief. The prophet also talked of the salvation this child would bring. This child would bring salvation. In Luke 2:28, Simeon took him in his arms and praised God, saying, "Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you now dismiss your servant in peace. For my eyes have seen your salvation." This is a good child. He's beautiful. He's the one. He knew it as soon as he put him in his arms. In verse 31 it says, "Which you have prepared in the sight of all people, a light for revelation to the Gentiles, and for glory to your people Israel." The child's father and mother marveled at what was said about him. Then Simon blessed them and said to Mary his mother, "This child is destined to cause the falling and the rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and the sword will pierce your own soul too." The sword will pierce your own soul too. What do you pray for as mothers? What do you really long for? You long for a Jeroboam who's a king of a big nation, who lives out his days, but has turned his back on God? Or do you wish more for an Abijah who dies good but young? There's some other options too. A Timothy who follows God and all the investment that you instilled in him. Or Jesus, who's truly the only righteous one, yet dies the most shameful death imaginable. You're a mother. Where does your heart go? You're just the mom. It does not matter who they turn out like. Your love and connection will always grieve at their loss. And the earthly reward will never really equal your investment. Please let's turn to Jeremiah 31:15. Timothy, he seems to be the easiest scenario. Oh yeah, I want a child just like Timothy. But in a sense, he too was plucked from the nest to die to himself and to live for God. One of the hardest things for Kat in motherhood is Christina, following after the Lord's call for her to be a missionary in Slovenia. You know, it's like a sword as well, having her and the grandkids far away from hugs, kisses, and dandelion bouquets. You know, speaking to mothers, you're just a mom. But each child is eternally affected by your investment in their lives, and your heart is completely at risk at losing each child that you love. You know, the story starts out this way. The sword, with rejection, with death, mourning, and great weeping. But it doesn't have to end this way. In Jeremiah 31:15, it says, "This is what the Lord says, a voice is heard in Ramah, mourning and a great weeping. Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because her children are no more." This is what the Lord says, "Refrain your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for your work will be rewarded, declares the Lord. They will return from the land of the enemy. So there is hope for your future, declares the Lord. Your children will return to their own land." Now, I like that phrase, your work will be rewarded. You know, motherhood is a painful position. Yes, there are joys in the occasional dandelion, but for the investment, the earthly rewards are usually pain, lack of recognition, way more withdrawals than deposits, and suffering. You know, it's a wonder that mothers ever stay around. You know, even on this Mother's Day, one day a year, you know, the carnation, a message with a mom in it, is not enough to get you pumped, to get you energized, to be a super mom, even to the end of next week. I mean, it's just not enough. What is enough? Please, let's turn to 2 Corinthians 4:12. You know, right from the beginning, God told Eve, after Adam sinned, that she would have pain in childbearing. Now, this is not just the severe pain that according to doctors and analysts equals to about 70 bones breaking at the same time as you're giving birth. Okay? Maybe that investment, okay, I invested, you're stuck now. I've got to raise this child. Maybe that investment keeps them going. I don't know. But I think there's something more. The pain keeps and continues going. That initial investment of pain sets you up to keep investing and investing. And your reward? A dandelion that'll be wilted tomorrow. But God says your work will be rewarded. They will return from the land of the enemy. You know, the reason that you're in such pain is because you are living in the land of the enemy now. You know, Jesus did not get crucified on the cross because everyone was his best friend. You're still in labor. Your work will not end. The sword that pierces your soul will not stop until your children return to their own land. This is the hope of the mothers that makes motherhood worthwhile. You know, yes, it's nice to be honored on Mother's Day. Yes, it's nice to be appreciated and receive flowers and accolades. But these are just dandelions in return for the bone-crushing, soul-piercing, mind-losing experiences of being just a mom. The reward is yet to come. In 2 Corinthians 4, starting with verse 12, it says, "So then death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. It is written, I believed, therefore I have spoken. With the same spirit of faith we also believe and therefore speak, because we know that the one who raised the Lord Jesus from the dead will also raise us with Jesus and present us with you in his presence. All this is for your benefit, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to the glory of God. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we're wasting away, yet inwardly we're being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Now the labor continues, the work continues, the pains continue in this life, but our work will be rewarded. Our pain, our weeping, your pain, your reward is still waiting. It's a hope. The suffering and the heartaches continue of motherhood, but for the Christian, the true reward is unseen. And one day the birth pangs will deliver the reward. One day as you step into the royal city, and instead of bringing death as you step into this city, He'll bring life. And your children will come home. Because of Jesus' death, it will give birth to new eternal life and a glory that far will outweigh the light and momentary troubles of motherhood in the present. Let's pray. Lord God, as we honor our mothers today, Lord, let us remember that we all come from you. And Lord, as you formed us and made us and knit us together in our mother's womb, Lord, your thoughts of us are more than the grains of sand. And how often do we grieve you? How often do we pierce you with a sword? Lord, forgive us. And may we, through your light and momentary suffering, be the hope, the joy, as we step into the new city. Lord, I pray that you would bless each mother today as they've worked hard, they've suffered much. Lord, that you will not only bless them today, but Lord, to give them that hope, to flesh that hope out in their mind and in their faith, so that they will grasp the reason that they are the mother, and their work will be rewarded. Lord, we ask this in your precious Son's name, Jesus. In His name, amen.